My name is Liam. I'm 35 years old. As an accountant living in Raleigh, North Carolina, I'm not the kind of guy who takes risks or lives on impulse. I believe in numbers, in stability, and in the idea that if you do things right, life will treat you right in return. I met Kathy, my wife, at a small birthday party at a friend's office 7 years ago. She worked in public relations back then, standing out from the crowd with her confident smile and sharp gaze. We talked the whole evening about books, movies, and the little things in life only people on the same wavelength would understand. In that moment, I knew I had found the right person. After 5 years of dating, we got married. It was a cozy ceremony with close friends and family, held at a small church just outside Asheville. I still remember Kathy's bright smile in her simple white dress, standing next to me at the altar. Back then, I believed I was the luckiest man alive. After the wedding, Kathy decided to quit her job. She said she wanted to focus on married life, to nurture our home and explore personal passions she hadn't had time for. I didn't object. I could handle the finances, and I truly believed that if she was happy, our marriage would be too. We didn't have kids. In fact, we never really had a serious conversation about it. Maybe we both thought we had plenty of time, or maybe I was just too caught up in work and Kathy. Well, I'm not so sure anymore. Our house was a 3-bedroom place in a quiet suburb. I had bought it with savings I had built up over the years along with a mortgage. Kathy handled the decorating, something she was really good at, while I covered the living expenses and set money aside each month. Nothing extravagant, but enough not to worry too much. Kathy used to love long morning coffees on the porch, evening walks in the park nearby, and movie nights at home. At least, that's how it used to be. As for me, I've always been Liam. Clear-cut, cautious, trying to do everything the right way, but sometimes, no matter how carefully you plan, life still manages to hit where it hurts most, especially when it comes from the one person you thought would never hurt you. I first started noticing something was off when Kathy began going to the gym more often. She'd never been much into fitness. She used to complain even when I suggested weekend walks. Then all of a sudden, she signed up for personal training sessions 5 days a week at a gym near our house. "I just want to stay in shape," she said, eyes glued to her phone when I asked why she was so into working out all of a sudden. I nodded, didn't press it, but something didn't sit right. The way she smiled to herself while texting, the way she quickly put her phone away whenever I entered the room. It all slowly stirred up an unease I couldn't ignore. Once, I offered to join her at the gym on the weekend. Kathy gave a forced laugh. "They don't allow guests unless you're in a class, babe. And I kinda need my own space to focus." Her tone was so cold it stopped me in my tracks. Then one night, while she was showering, her phone kept buzzing non-stop. I had no intention of invading her privacy, but the repeated dings got annoying. I glanced over to silence it, and then I saw it. "Can't wait to hold you in my arms tomorrow. D." My heart sank. I unlocked the phone and it hit me like a punch to the chest. Dozens of messages between her and a man named Derek. These weren't just flirty texts. They were filled with longing, physical desire, and plans for a future. Without me in it. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, the bathroom light casting an unsteady beam through the half-closed door. My heart pounded not with pain, but with a cold emptiness spreading through me. When Kathy came out with wet hair and the scent of body wash still lingering, I looked at her without a word. I just held up the phone, the last message still glowing on the screen. She froze. Her eyes locked with mine, then flicked to the phone in my hand. For a few seconds, everything stopped. "Liam, I can explain," she stammered, then fell silent, as if realizing there was nothing left to explain. "Then go ahead," I said, my voice so calm it surprised even me. "Explain." Kathy sat down, clutching her towel tightly. "Me and Derek. It's only been a few months. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I said nothing. I waited to see how much truth she was willing to let slip from the same lips that once swore she'd never hurt me. I thought, She took a deep breath. I thought I didn't love you anymore. I felt stuck. I needed a way out. I looked into her eyes. There were no tears, no apologies. Just a gaze as cold as a locked vault. I want a divorce, she said, like she was picking a dinner reservation. And I want half of everything, the house, the savings, the car if necessary. I tilted my head slightly. You betray me and then demand half of everything? I gave up my job, my career, to build this life with you, she said, her voice finally showing a hint of sharpness. You wouldn't have what you do now if I hadn't been holding things down at home. I let out a dry laugh, hollow, like rotting wood in the rain. How convenient, I said. Betrayal and entitlement, all in 2 sentences? Kathy didn't answer. She just stared at me, like she was waiting for me to break down, to cry, to beg. But I didn't. I stood up, grabbed my coat from the rack. Then let's get divorced, I said. As for the assets, I paused, locking eyes with her. Those same eyes I once thought held genuine love. We'll talk about that later. I walked out of the house. Outside, it was a muggy Florida night, but inside, me, it was ice. I drove straight to my father's house, the fire inside me smoldering low. Not from heartbreak, but from the sheer audacity Kathy had shown. I once thought if she ever betrayed me, I'd fall apart. But no. I just felt empty, like a room after the last light's been switched off. My father, William, now 67, is a man of strict principles, so meticulous it can be maddening. But it's that same mindset that saved me in this marriage. Back when I first started earning well as an accountant, he gave me a warning. Liam, never put all your eggs in one basket under your name. Life's unpredictable. People don't always cheat because they stop loving you. Sometimes, they just find an easier way out. At the time, I just laughed, thinking my dad was being overly cautious. But I listened. My dad holds the title to the house we live in, the savings account with over $280,000, 0 cents, and the investment portfolio I spent years building. On paper, I only have a modest checking account with a little over $6, 0 cents, and a 2015 Ford Escape. The next morning, I met my dad at the breakfast table. He was carefully pouring coffee, as if he knew I needed to start the day with something more bitter than the truth I was facing. Time to activate the defense plan, huh? He asked, eyes fixed on me. I nodded, holding the warm coffee cup in my hands, the heat spreading through my palms like one last breath before heading into battle. Good, he said simply. We'll do everything by the book, but no one's taking advantage of you again. That same afternoon, I contacted our family lawyer, Marla Grayson, a sharp woman in her 50s who wasn't afraid of any courtroom. After reviewing the asset documents, she smiled knowingly. If she thinks she's walking away with half the house and a pile of cash, she's in for a rude awakening. She has no idea everything's under my dad's name, I emphasized. And we'll keep it that way for as long as we can, Marla concluded. 3 days later, Kathy texted asking to have a civilized conversation. I agreed and chose a downtown cafe, a public place, plenty of people, plenty of eyes, and no room for an emotional outburst. She arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a tight black dress and red lipstick, more like someone heading to a job interview than a divorce discussion. I've thought this through, she said, cutting to the chase. I want half. The house, the money, the car, everything. I took a sip of coffee, set the cup down, and slowly opened the leather briefcase beside me. I pulled out copies of the house deed. Under my dad's name, bank statements, just $6,327, 0 cents. Car registration. Yes, under my name. Everything I have is right here, I said calmly. Kathy frowned and picked up the documents. Her eyes scanned each line like she was reading a foreign language. She looked up, her forehead starting to wrinkle. And Al, did you put everything under your dad's name? Before we got married, I replied, never breaking eye contact. Because I believe people change, and I don't believe in gambling on marriage. She was silent for a long moment, Her lips tightened. Her eyes looked unsettled. You set me up? No, I said. I protected myself from what I couldn't control. Her face stiffened. She grabbed her purse and stood up, her eyes sharp like she wanted to slice the air in half. You think you've won, don't you? She growled. You think just because nothing's in your name, I can't get anything? I shrugged. We can go to court if you'd like. But I haven't hidden anything, and courts don't rule based on feelings. She walked away without another word, but in her eyes, I saw it clearly. Not regret, but fury and frustration that things hadn't gone the way she planned. I stayed a few minutes longer, staring out at the busy streets of Nashville. Despite the quiet waves of emotion still moving through me, I knew one thing. I hadn't lost a thing, and sometimes, it's what no one sees that keeps you safest. A week after that tense cafe meeting, I received an email from the attorney's office representing Kathy. They proposed a mediation session, citing financial damage minimization and avoiding prolonged emotional distress for both parties. I chuckled as I read that line. Clearly, Kathy still didn't get it. I called Marla, forwarded her the email. She still thinks she's sitting on a gold mine, Marla chuckled softly. Good. Let's let them peel back the illusion themselves. Agreed to the mediation, not because I hoped for an amicable resolution, but because I wanted Kathy and her high-priced lawyer to see the real numbers, face to face, and realize every scheme they planned would only backfire. The mediation was held at a neutral law office in the heart of the city. The conference room was spacious, glass-walled, with a sweeping view of Nashville in autumn. So beautiful it was almost cruel, given our situation. Kathy arrived with a platinum-hailed man in a gray suit, exuding the kind of confidence that belongs in a luxury cologne advertisement. I guessed this was Josh, her attorney, rumored to have clean-swept several high-profile divorces in the South. I exchanged polite handshakes with both. Kathy glared at me, skipping any greeting. Marla began by suggesting a process. Each party would declare their assets, then discuss the division. I remained silent, letting my lawyer take the lead. Josh smiled and slid a thick folder toward us. We've listed all the assets my client believes are jointly owned, he said smoothly. The Franklin House, the SunTrust savings account, 2 investment properties in Shelbyville, plus some minor stock holdings provided by my client. I didn't react, just slid a thin envelope back across the table. Marla nodded. Here's our declaration, in accordance with legal requirements. Josh opened it, scanned quickly, 1 sheet of paper. At the top, it read, Bank accountant Liam's name, $6,142.00. 2015 Ford Escape, current estimated value, $7,500. 0 cents. No real estate in Liam's name. Silence. Only the hum of the HVAC system filled the room. Kathy glanced at Josh, then back at me, her eyes widening like she'd just woken from a pleasant dream into a nightmare. What is this? She asked, her voice rising. You're hiding something, right? The house, the savings, those investments? Why aren't they here? Josh frowned. Turned to Marla. My client believes Mr. Liam is concealing assets. Marla simply shrugged, voice steady as ever. We've fully and truthfully disclosed all property legally owned by my client. Any other assets are not under his legal ownership. I want this investigated, Kathy burst out, her voice trembling. We lived in that house for 3 years. You can't tell me it's not his. I looked up, meeting her eyes. The house is under my father's name. It has been since before we got married. You remember the refinancing papers from back then? You signed, right below his name. Kathy's face drained of color. She remembered. I was sure of it. But that only made her angrier. You set me up, she said, gripping the edge of the table. You knew this would happen. No, I replied, steady. I was following financial advice from someone who knows life rarely goes as planned. If someone betrayed me, at least I wouldn't lose everything. Josh jumped in, trying to salvage the situation. We'll be requesting a full investigation. There's a chance those assets were transferred fraudulently to avoid division during divorce proceedings. Marla smiled, sharp as a razor. Please, be my guest, but let me remind you, the house and those accounts are all under Mr. William Montgomery's name, not my client's. He's held them for many years, verified through notarized documents and tax records. If Ms. Kathy would like to sue a 67-year-old man for not handing his home over to his ex-daughter-in-law, then go right ahead. Kathy stood abruptly, her chair sliding back, eyes brimming with tears. Not of sorrow, but the bitterness of watching her dream of splitting everything crash into dust. I sat silently, watching her walk away. No satisfaction, no sympathy. I knew I owed her nothing now. Less than a week after that failed mediation, Marlo informed me Kathy had hired a new attorney, none other than Joseph Joe Halbrook, the infamous courtroom hound of the Southeast. A legal shark known for squeezing everything out of opponents, who had driven more than one businessman into bankruptcy with his sharp tongue and slick tricks. Kathy's playing her last card, Marla said, forwarding me Halbrook's case summary. She thinks pressure will make you cave. I smirked. She still didn't realize she was trying to dig a well in solid rock. 2 days later, Kathy filed a motion to expand the discovery process, including the right to hire an independent forensic accountant to verify potential intentional concealment of assets. She also included a sworn statement claiming she was certain I had transferred money to other accounts or invested it under someone else's name. The name William Montgomery, my father, was mentioned several times, along with a request for access to his financial records. Marla wasn't surprised. She responded point by point, firm and unshaken. They can dig through every cent in your name, but they won't find anything. And if they try to drag your parents into this, I'll file a countersuit for harassment of third-party witnesses. Just as Marla predicted, 3 days later, a man in a black suit, clearly the hired forensic accountant, showed up at my office requesting a direct interview regarding my personal income sources. He brought a confidentiality agreement and tried to act friendly, but I responded coldly. All required documents have been submitted through my attorney. I have nothing more to add. Soon after, my father William received a subpoena to testify, requesting full disclosure of all accounts, properties, and financial resources possibly connected to me over the last 10 years. When he called me, his voice calm but laced with disappointment, I felt it in my gut. That girl, she wants to drag this entire family into her mess? He asked, his voice rough. I put everything under my name for exactly this reason, to keep you out of reach, and now they're coming after me? I'm sorry, I said, guilt weighing on my chest. I won't let this go any further. Marla immediately filed a motion to quash the subpoena, citing privacy protections for non-parties to the lawsuit. She also noted that all the assets had been in my father's name long before Kathy and I got married, clearly supported by financial records, tax filings, and public notarizations. We can go on the offensive, Marla suggested. Request a protective order if they keep harassing your parents. If they want to play legal games, I'll play. But Kathy didn't stop. She began texting me daily, sometimes crying, sometimes threatening. One day she even showed up at my parents' house in Franklin, banging on the door at noon, demanding to speak with Mr. William. My mother had to call local police to intervene. When I heard what happened, I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. She's not the woman you once knew, my mother said, voice trembling. Don't let her tear down anyone else. She was right. Kathy was no longer the person I had once loved, trusted, and dreamed a future with. She had become someone bitter, destructive, and ready to drag the world down just because she couldn't get what she wanted. Marla sent me an internal memo. The forensic accountant hired by Kathy's team had concluded no evidence of fraudulent transfers or hidden assets beyond legal jurisdiction. A red stamp at the bottom read, Conclusion. No basis to proceed with extended investigation. I sat frozen at my computer screen, exhaustion crashing over me like waves. But at the same time, a small sense of relief crept in. Every layer of defense my father had built held strong. Kathy's wild plan, lawyers, accountants, public pressure, was failing piece by piece. And I knew the next steps she took would only be more chaotic, because people truly lose control when they realize they're left with nothing. I started to realize things had crossed beyond normal legal limits when, on a Monday morning, our HR manager, Cheryl, walked into my office holding her phone, face tense. "Liam, you need to see this." It was a public Facebook post from an account under the name Kathy Anderson. The profile photo was her, smiling on a beach, but the content hit like a punch to the reputation. 7 years of sacrifice, giving up my career, only to be betrayed and financially abused. I gave my youth to a man with no heart, who only hides and manipulates. Warning to anyone who thinks marriage is safety: be careful, especially if your husband is an accountant with professional-level asset hiding skills. The post had hundreds of shares, a mix of sympathetic and skeptical comments. But what froze me was the tag section. Kathy had tagged me, my co-workers, even my company. Cheryl spoke softly but firmly. "Upper management wants this handled immediately. Our reputation is everything." I could only nod, speechless. My face was hot. I knew Kathy could be selfish, petty even, but I never imagined she'd weaponize my job. Less than 48 hours later, I saw her again, not in court, not through lawyers, but standing right in the lobby of my company. She barged in right at noon, wearing a bright red dress like she was begging for attention, her high heels clicking so loudly they echoed through the floor. Security tried to stop her, but Kathy screamed in front of everyone. "You want me to shut up? Then give me what I deserve. Don't think you can just hide assets and get away with it." The whole office froze. I had just stepped out of the elevator and saw the scene unfold. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. "Kathy," I said, keeping my voice calm, "this isn't the place for this." "Oh, really, Liam? Then where is it? When you lock me out of everything and leave me with nothing, did you expect me to stay silent forever?" I turned to security. "Call the police." She didn't stop. Her eyes red, but her voice sharp as a blade. "I'll tell everyone here exactly who you are. A fraud, a manipulator, a man who emotionally abused his wife and made her look like a fool." A second security guard arrived and politely tried to escort her out, but she kept yelling until the police showed up. It all ended with her being led into a squad car while whispers filled the air. That night, I got an email from Marla titled, "URG, Escalating Legal Protections. Liam, I've filed for a temporary restraining order. Given today's outburst at your workplace, this is completely justified. I also advise you to save all her social media posts and any written threats. We'll present them in court if necessary." At the same time, a coworker's message popped up on my phone. "Bro, what's going on? She said you're financially abusing her and cut her off from bank accounts. You good?" I closed my eyes. It was clear Kathy had decided to go all the way, and she wouldn't stop until she dragged me down with her. In the following days, Kathy continued posting vague but inflammatory statuses, using phrases like psychological abuser, financial control, and two-faced husband. She shared old pictures of us with captions, alluding to the silent pain of betrayal. I didn't respond. No comments, no posts. Marla told me, "Silence is your power right now. Let the law speak for you." So I did. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about divorce anymore. This was a full-blown assault on my dignity and reputation, and, if I wasn't careful, Kathy would destroy me with beautifully crafted lies the world loves to believe. Derek disappeared just when Kathy needed him the most. I heard it from Kayla, an old mutual friend, when I ran into her at the grocery store. She frowned, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's back living at her parents' place in Tampa." Derek vanished. "Lately he's been posting solo gym pics. No trace of Kathy." I nodded, unsurprised. Guys like Derek, smooth talkers with 8-pack abs who live off image, can never handle reality. He could seduce a married woman, but when the scandal hit and consequences followed, He bolted faster than anyone. And this time, it was a storm. After being escorted out of my office by police, Kathy didn't cause more public scenes, but she kept up her victim parade online. Only, it was losing traction. People who used to flood her posts with hearts and "stay strong, sis," started going quiet. A few even unfriended her. I guess they were beginning to see who had really crossed the line. According to Marla, Kathy could no longer afford her fancy shark law firm. Her attorney officially withdrew after 3 weeks of non-payment, which meant, next time in court, Kathy would be representing herself. I didn't feel joy, but I didn't feel pity either. She chose this path. She ruined the marriage. She aired everything publicly. And now, she was paying the price. Kathy's financial situation was a mess. Her bank account had always been secondary. I had handled all the bills, insurance, and monthly expenses. Post-breakup, with no steady income, she was forced to move back in with her parents in a run-down house on the outskirts of Tampa, a place she once swore she'd never return to. I heard her father, Raymond, a strict former serviceman who valued honor and responsibility, was furious about what she'd done. Her mother, Linda, tried to protect her, but was growing exhausted from all the arguments over money, the complaints, and the piles of legal paperwork Kathy left lying around. Another friend told me Kathy had tried borrowing money from acquaintances to pay off her old attorney, but no one would lend her anything. Even her closest girlfriends started avoiding her, too tired of the never-ending negativity. Even Derek, the one who once promised to stand by her through the storm, began distancing himself. He unfollowed her on Instagram, deleted their photos, and quietly disappeared from social media altogether. Apparently, the drama had cost him some loyal female clients at the gym. I don't know if they're still in touch, but one thing I do know for sure, Kathy's romantic fantasy was shattered into 100 pieces. She thought she'd start fresh, with a new man, half my assets, and a carefree new life. But reality had other plans. One Saturday afternoon, I stood outside my new downtown Orlando apartment, my fresh start after leaving the old house, and looked at a message from Kathy. Just one line. "If you have any humanity left, give me a chance to survive." By design. I didn't reply. Not because I was cruel, but because I knew. Humanity isn't giving chances to the one who tried to bury you. It's choosing not to retaliate, not to hate, not to push them down further. I had done my part. Stayed calm, played fair. No smearing, no revenge. Kathy destroyed everything on her own. That courtroom was cold and quiet despite the blazing Florida sun outside. I sat on the plaintiff's bench beside my lawyer, Mr. Morris, a salt-and-pepper-haired former federal prosecutor turned private attorney. His face was calm, eyes sharp, like he already knew every move the other side would make. Across the room, Kathy sat beside a young substitute attorney she had managed to hire after her main counsel dropped out due to non-payment. Kathy wore a black dress, her hair curled, makeup carefully applied. But it couldn't hide the fatigue and dark circles under her eyes. The judge was Elaine Robbins, a strict woman in her 60s known for her fair rulings and intolerance for courtroom theatrics. She nodded and called the hearing to order. Kathy was the first to speak. Her voice trembled as she began, claiming she'd been deceived, abandoned, and that after giving up her marketing career to build a family, I had thrown her out with nothing. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke of trusting me completely, never suspecting all the assets were under someone else's name. He hid everything under his father's name, Kathy said, her voice cracking. I have nothing left but a few pieces of clothing and trust that was completely betrayed. Her lawyer chimed in, claiming that putting assets under my father's name was a method of concealing marital property, an attempt to avoid lawful division during the divorce. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, silent like an accountant reviewing his books, calm, deliberate, and unshakable. When it was our turn, Mr. Morris stood up. Your Honor, he began, every accusation brought before this court will be answered with facts, verified, legal, and supported by credible witnesses. Then came the evidence we had spent months preparing, printed messages between Kathy and Derek, filled with lines like, "I missed you last night. When are we finally going to make this public? And Liam won't suspect a thing." We had photos of the two of them at a hotel in Clearwater. The same day, Kathy told me she was meeting an old college friend. Kathy's face drained of color as each piece of evidence appeared on the screen. Then came the witnesses. My father, Richard, walked into the courtroom, his cane tapping gently against the hardwood floor. At 68, he was sharp and composed. Under cross-examination, he clearly explained, "I've held the title to the house and investments since 2019, based on sound financial advice to protect our family's assets. All of it was legal, reported to the IRS, and done without any deceit." Next was my coworker, Jenna, who had worked with me for nearly 6 years. She confirmed my income, our household spending, and that I'd never received a single off-the-book payment. "He's the most meticulous guy I've ever worked with," Jenna said. "He even tracks weekly grocery costs on spreadsheets." A light chuckle rolled through the courtroom, everyone except Kathy. Mr. Morris closed with a firm statement. "Your Honor, my client has never avoided responsibility. He offered mediation from the beginning and disclosed every asset truthfully. But what the defendant seeks is not justice. It's a post-divorce lifestyle funded by someone else, and that is not something the law supports." Judge Robin sat in silence for a few moments after both sides rested. She then looked directly at Kathy. "You committed adultery, broke the marital bond, and are now requesting a share of property that, legally, was never yours. There's no evidence the plaintiff hid any assets, and none of your allegations have been substantiated. The court denies your claim to shared property." Kathy stiffened. Her lawyer lowered her head with a sigh. "However," the judge continued, "while the defendant is not obligated to provide ongoing support, the plaintiff will pay a temporary stipend for 3 months to allow the defendant time to find employment and regain stability. After that, all obligations end." I nodded. I accepted that. 3 months, not as repayment, but as a way to close this chapter with dignity. Kathy said nothing as she left the courtroom. She passed by me quietly, red-eyed, but without turning back. As for me, walking out into the midday Florida sun, I felt like I had stepped out of a hurricane. Not untouched, but strong enough to start again. Kathy didn't hold it together. Just outside the courthouse, she exploded into a fit of screams, shocking the passers-by. "This is unfair. I'm appealing. I won't let him get away with this," she shrieked. Part rage, part desperation. Then, as if realizing how absurd it all sounded, she suddenly slumped down on a nearby bench, burying her face in her hands. I stood a few steps away, silent. Honestly, there was nothing left to say. Our story had ended long ago. Today was just the paperwork. Her new, visibly young attorney approached and gently placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to offer comfort, but Kathy shoved her off, yelling, "You told me I'd win. Now I don't even have bus fare home. Don't touch me." I didn't stay to watch more. I left the courthouse and walked to the parking lot under the soft afternoon breeze. Sitting behind the wheel, I let out a long, deep breath, not from exhaustion, but from the relief of finally breathing freely. What I felt wasn't triumph or pride. It was something closer to gratitude. Gratitude that my father, Richard, had taught me early on, that in life the only thing we can truly control is how well we prepare for the unpredictable. Thanks to him, I kept my house, my savings, and my reputation, even when all of that had teetered on the edge of destruction because of a toxic divorce. I called him on my way home. When I heard his steady voice on the other end, I couldn't help but say, "I owe you everything." He just chuckled and replied, "Not at all. You did what needed to be done. Every lesson has a price. You just paid yours early and saved yourself some pain." That night, I stopped by my favorite little diner, the one Kathy and I used to go to on anniversaries. I took a seat by the window, ordered a grilled chicken sandwich and a root beer. The peace felt strange, but good. I no longer scanned the room looking for a familiar face. The emptiness didn't scare me anymore. If anything, it felt like freedom. I began clearing out the house. Not Kathy's stuff, She had taken all that before she left. But the space inside my mind. I took down old photos, changed the sheets, opened every window to let in the sunlight and breeze. Small things, but healing in a way no words ever could be. I returned to work. My colleagues seemed to respect me even more after all that had happened. Some even said I handled it like a movie, calm, grounded, never letting emotion cloud judgment. But they didn't know about the sleepless nights, the times I had to remind myself not to yell, not to cave. I learned to live alone, not in loneliness, but in freedom. I hit the gym, not to forget anyone, but to get stronger. I started reading again, books on psychology, law, even science fiction I used to love. I didn't block Kathy on social media, but she stopped posting. Maybe she realized no one was listening anymore. Old friends quietly disappeared. Even family members stopped stepping in. Derek, the man she thought was her escape route, vanished like he never existed. And me? I lived, truly lived, clear-headed, whole. I never wanted any of this. But I now know, sometimes, you have to lose what you thought you cherished, to finally hold on to who you truly are. That lesson, painful, expensive, is something I'll carry forever. My story is a reminder that love without trust won't survive, and marriage without preparation is a gamble. In the real world, betrayal is possible, but being unprepared is inexcusable. Feelings can change, but clarity, independence, and foresight will always hold value. I lost a wife, but I kept my dignity, my assets, and my peace. Sometimes, loss is how life clears the path for better things ahead. What do you think about Liam's story and the choices he made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories and real-life lessons about love, marriage, and everything in between.